All right, everybody, we have some breaking news. The stakes are only getting higher and higher surrounding Donald Trump's America 250 fare as people are passing out there due to a lack of air conditioning and a lack of planning, as a wooden plank almost just crushed a dozen dancers on stage, missing them by mere feet. If you watch on screen now, you'll see the wooden plank falling from above, just barely missing the dancers on stage. I'll play the full clip for you all in just one moment, but all of this is only adding to the fact that there is a new report out today showing how this entire America 250 event is fraudulent. It is fake. Donald Trump has been scamming people, rewiring that money towards contractors that are working in his administration, and that is why this entire event is a mess. In just one moment, I'm going to bring on a top Democrat that has been investigating this, and he's going to break some news for you all. So make sure you drop a like. Make sure you subscribe to the Adam Mockler feed. We have been digging very deep on this fair. And on the Adam Mockler feed, we've been saying for the past 2 weeks, not to do the whole I told you so thing, but we've been saying this smells like a money laundering scheme. It smells like the reflecting pool, the ballroom, all of these other schemes that have allowed Donald Trump to reallocate funds towards his friends and his donors. We even have Trump supporters passing out there because there is not enough air conditioning. I want you to listen to this clip on screen.
Has been affecting folks like Megan Nicoletti and her husband, Brian. And, you know, Megan, you were just over in the medical tent being treated. Tell us about how you're feeling.
Now I'm fine, but previously, none of these booths have air conditioning. We don't know what happened, but I started seeing stars.
Oh, really?
And we went to the tent. There's a religious tent because that's the theme for today.
Yes.
And they had a pool. They're baptizing people. Thank God they had the pool. They said, "Do you want to get in?" I go, "Yes, I think I do."
I think I want to be.
Wait, can I just point out, this is the most Trumpian thing ever. She's wearing a Trump hat, and she goes to the event that is basically celebrating Donald Trump more than it's celebrating America, and she passes out because Donald Trump didn't even install air conditioning and decided to reallocate the funds towards his friends and then build fake monuments. Like, do you guys see all of these columns in the background, or I guess they're called pillars? They're all fake. They're all 2D Looney Tunes ass pillars because he reallocated the funds away. I'm going to play for you this clip of the dancers, but sometimes YouTube will, take down videos if I play music. So I'm just going to unmute it the moment that the beam falls. Watch for the support beam falling. You can see it falling, and all of the dancers then pause and begin to look around. People are going to get incredibly hurt by this. I already showed you guys this video earlier today of one of the other columns being held up by some expanding foam. It's not even caulk, it's just foam that is expanding there, and this is on the verge of falling off and harming somebody in the same way it did here. Donald Trump is putting on a faux celebration, and I'm very, very happy that we get to bring on somebody who has been deeply, deeply investigating this. Before we bring in this congressman for an interview, which I urge you to watch, let me just read to you how this report begins. It says, Freedom 250 may have conducted wire fraud by luring unsuspecting donors who intended to support the congressionally chartered foundation and giving them Freedom 250 bank information instead. Presidential access was sold to those willing to pay for it. A false history of the country was imposed to suit the president's distorted vision of the past. Christian nationalist ideology was injected into the events, eroding the wall of church-state separation. Loose logo licensing let Freedom 250 brand deeply racist merchandise under the government's banner. An organization that was once responsible for planning events surrounding the January 6th insurrection has now been contracted for America's 250th celebrations. Taxpayer dollars were funneled to the president's preferred contractors. America's private, personal information has been harvested by Trump's allies for political purposes. All right, we got to bring in the Democratic representative who has been leading the way on this investigation because he has more to break down. This is Representative Jared Huffman of California, who is the ranking member of the House Natural Resources Committee.
It's grotesque, in my opinion. So we were on track to have a broadly unifying, non-political celebration of this once-in-a-generation milestone. You're too young for this, Adam, but I'm old enough to remember 1976. I was a 12-year-old kid. 12-year-olds are pretty perceptive. And, that bicentennial celebration was in the heat of a presidential race between the sitting president, Gerald Ford, and the challenger, Jimmy Carter, the celebration had nothing to do with any of those politics. And if anyone had incentive to make it a political weapon, it was Gerald Ford in that moment. He didn't. He was bigger than that. He was more patriotic than that. And so the country just loved the national unity and celebration that we experienced in 1976. What we set up for this milestone, Congress did this in 2016, I got to be part of it, was basically replicating that. It was creating a really thoughtful commission with some statutory guardrails to protect it from any kind of political shenanigans or exploitation. And Donald Trump came on the scene in early 2025 and just started blowing it all up.
Can you jump in a little bit on the possibility of wire fraud and the data mining and how this all loops in to just be a huge betrayal of the American people?
Yeah. What happened is that this Freedom 250 shadow company, this LLC that Trump and his team set up to basically upstage and sideline the bipartisan commission Congress created in 2016 that was supposed to lead our national celebration. But through this shadow company that they housed within the National Parks Foundation, which is a beloved charity that has for over 50 years been raising money for our national parks, has never been politicized, never been corrupted or exploited. But by setting up a subsidiary of the National Parks Foundation in this way, they misled a lot of people. They used the NPF donor base. They reached out to folks and corporations and others who had intended to donate to America 250, the bipartisan commission that we set up, and led them to believe that's what they were doing. But in the course of the transaction, they got banking instructions to wire their donation to Freedom 250, which goes into all of those no-bid contracts and vanity projects and the black hole of this entire project for Trump.
So they reallocated the funds that were meant for America 250 to Freedom 250 by essentially taking people's banking information and putting it into the wrong form and getting that money sent. And then Donald Trump used that money to funnel it into his friends and allies in no-bid contracting. That is an insane amount of corruption and a huge betrayal of the public, right?
That is the story that this evidence paints. We have confidential witnesses that have come forward, whistleblowers, with a lot of this information. We're going to protect their identity for now, but this is an ongoing investigation. And if it proves up the way I think it looks right now, there could very well be criminal referrals coming out of this.
Can I ask you, what kind of picture does this paint when you take into account the reflecting pool, the reports that the ballroom is now worth $500 million and is being used with no bid contracts in a similar way? Does this paint a picture of an administration that is just using its power to perpetually enrich the people who helped elect them? How do you view this?
Well, I think that's exactly what this speaks to. It is a betrayal of the public trust. It is outrageous. And, you know, anyone who may have still thought at least something is sacred for these folks who seem to want to monetize and exploit absolutely everything, this fiasco kind of shows nothing is sacred because they stole our nation's 250th birthday. They repurposed it, made it all about Donald Trump in a way that deeply divides Americans, and they monetized it.
I don't know if you saw this, but just about 30 minutes ago, there were some dancers on stage at America 250 or Freedom 250, and a wooden plank fell on stage and almost crushed a few of the dancers. Earlier this morning, a Trump supporter passed out due to the lack of air conditioning, and then she came on camera with a Trump hat and said, "I'm glad to be here." So he's clearly still, hurting his fans, but still getting some of his fans to show up. Can you expand a little bit more on the organization that was responsible for planning events surrounding January 6th now being used to celebrate or plan the events to celebrate our birthday? I mean, it really sickens me.
Yeah.
As a young dude who's grown up at a time when I see the president of the United States spreading lies about the election and like getting his supporters to be foaming at the mouth and undermine the most precious thing in our democracy, the peaceful transfer of power, for him to then pardon those people and then use similar organizations, the same organizations, to put on a celebration for our country, I find it sickening.
Yeah, well, I do too. And I think most Americans will. This is a longtime Trump political organizer that has done MAGA campaign events for him for many, many years, including, as you say, the events surrounding the January 6th insurrection. This is what happens when you set up a shell company that's totally insulated from public scrutiny. That's why they went through all these machinations to hijack America 250, because under this shell that they created, Freedom 250, none of this was public. It was all totally secret. And they could do no bid contracts and self-dealing, at whatever level they wanted.
And then in your video, you mentioned that the CEO of Freedom 250 went over to Davos and was basically saying to foreign leaders that they can invest or help mold America's 250th celebration. Is this just direct selling of access to our country? Because we've seen this administration sell access to the presidency in a unique way. For example, when Trump got into office, he pardoned the founder of Binance, CZ, and the founder of Binance helped facilitate a $2 billion investment from the UAE into Trump's personal World Liberty Financial crypto firm, directly profiting. Donald Trump lifted his tariffs off of Vietnam, and the next week, Vietnam announced a $1.2 billion golf course. Is this just a pattern of them using these events to then sell access to other countries?
Oh, it's an immutable pattern. It seems that every opportunity is something for Trump to exploit and enrich himself with. And that seems to be what Freedom 250 was doing as it went around the world. And we've seen forums, of course, for foreign donors inviting donations. But you're right, the CEO of Freedom 250 was on the record telling these donors that they can help shape America's celebration. And he called it marketing freedom. So another one of these euphemisms for just, feeding at the trough.
There's a really interesting aspect that you brought up in your video that not enough people are talking about as it pertains to this Freedom 250 event, and that is the Christian nationalism infused throughout it. Can you give us a summary of how Donald Trump hijacked this and then infused his own Christian nationalist vision on America's 250th birthday?
Yeah, weaponizing raw Christian nationalism is one of Donald Trump's main political strategies. It's how he won the presidency. It's how he has governed. And it was a big part of how he took over and hijacked this America 250 celebration. And so you saw all of these Trump events that were like evangelical revivals on the National Mall, sponsored by your United States government, paid for by your taxpayer dollars. You see these so-called freedom trucks going around the country with content that was curated purporting to be about American history, but it wasn't from the Smithsonian. It was from a Christian nationalist entity known as PragerU. And it was full of errors and proselytizing and over-the-top Christian nationalist propaganda. So this has been a huge element of the takeover of our 250th celebration.
Yeah, final question, I guess. And this is just on it's like a more personal, genuine question. How do you think these Republicans in Congress that you work with cope with the fact that Donald Trump has this copious amount of corruption? We talked about this before, but I do a lot of these Republican debates on CNN and other networks. And I can tell deep down that some of these Republican operatives understand that this crypto profiteering and that this pay-to-play corruption is bad. Like, I can tell that they understand it, but then every time they go on camera, they have to play to one person, and that is Trump. Do you think a lot of your colleagues, without speaking on behalf of anybody, do you think they get how bad it is, but they just don't have the political incentive to talk about it?
They don't want to see it, because if they see it, they have to say something about it. And if they say something, they're in deep trouble with Donald Trump.
So they stay blind?
So they look away. And I will tell you, over the last year, as we did the investigation that produced this report, we tried over and over to get our Republican colleagues on the Natural Resources Committee to join us in the letters we were writing, in the investigations we wanted to see, have a hearing at least about this subject, do some oversight. We couldn't get them interested at all.
It's wild. Just reading this report on page 10, it says, having failed to capture America 250 outright and take that over, the Trump administration then pursued its vision through pressure from within. They then created Freedom 250. And then with this Task Force 250, they pressed the commission to fold Trump-aligned programming into the slate of events, like the UFC fight, the Patriot Games, all of these Trump rallies. And Donald Trump on Truth Social called it a Trump rally, the biggest Trump rally. So they've hijacked this American celebration. And just like everything Donald Trump touches, it turned to shit. Sorry, just going to say it, it turned to shit. And now it is a celebration of him that is falling apart in front of our eyes. So thank you for the investigatory work that you guys have done. And I appreciate you, Representative. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
We are uncovering more and more and more about this fair every single day. We will continue to lead the coverage on this on the Adam Mockler feed. Of course, drop a like to help boost this, share this around, subscribe. I love you all, and peace out.